I'm going to read you something that's over 100 years old from a writer I like a lot. Her stories, we used to sell these all the time at the bookstore. And they're kids' books, but she also wrote some pretty cool stuff, chilling stories for adults. Right, co-pilot?
There is nothing wrong with your television set. Do not attempt to adjust the picture. We are controlling transmission. If we wish to make it louder, we will bring up the volume. If we wish to make it softer, we will tune it to a whisper. We will control the horizontal. We will control the vertical. We can roll the image, make it flutter. We can change the focus to a soft blur, or sharpen it to crystal clarity. For the next hour, sit quietly and we will control all that you see and hear. We repeat, there is nothing wrong with your television set. You are about to participate in a great adventure. You are about to experience the awe and mystery which reaches from the inner mind to the outer limits.
All right. Excellent, excellent. Now, let me do a little something for you here and continue with a little fiction for Friday night and give you some information about a woman named Edith Nesbit. Now, I've got this on my other computer, but I'm going to call up Edith Nesbit for you because for a while, she was one of the most popular children's story writers in the world. She also wrote as Mrs. E. Bland, of all things. And so, show this up to you up on the screen here. All right. So this is Mrs. E. Bland, Edith Nesbit. And you can see her first great success was the story of the Treasure Seekers, 1899. She was born in 1858. Her most celebrated book remains The Railway Children, published in 1906. Her great gift was the ability to create child characters who are real young human beings behaving naturally. Her unhappy marriage gave her much experience with children, as well as bringing up her own four by her philandering husband. She consented to bring Bland's illegitimate offspring into her household. That must have been a tough world for her, but hopefully she got some real benefits out of that with the love of those kids as well. So hopefully everything turned out to be a blessing somehow. It's we are always blessed somehow, even with mistakes. So, and she wasn't, she was doing something nice. That's good. So let's talk a little bit about her because she has an experience, as you can see on the screen. She's not just a children's fiction writer, she's a horror writer. And on Fiction Friday, whether it's on Booktube for a former Star Trek writing fellow, or it's for Liberty Conspiracy on Friday nights, we like to read good stories. And now it's time. Oh, the co-pilot is insistent about something else here. Hello, co-pilot. How are you? Yeah, there you go. Okay, that ought to do it. Now I'm going to read to you from the book Into the London Fog. Now, this one was not edited by Mike Ashley. This was edited by Elizabeth Dearnley, Dearnley, Elizabeth Dearnley. So get that up there on the screen, complete for you. Very cool. All right, now, this is quite interesting because you'll see here they go around the city of London to different areas in London for stories that are based in these areas. So if you want to get a tour of maybe Victorian London, you might see something in Regent's Park or Soho or the Strand. Do the Strand! Or you might go into Whitechapel, like my story, Whitechapel's over there. Very interesting place. Then there's this one. Edith Nesbit's The Mystery of the Semi-Detached, in the area called Crystal Palace in London. So let's go over here and check out page 255 for the area called Crystal Palace. And they have little map excerpts of the city here, but it's kind of hard to distinguish. So in fact, why don't I do this? Let me call up Crystal Palace on the computer screen for you and just do that. And then you'll be able to see where it is. So we'll go. All right, there we go. So here is a little information about Crystal Palace. The huge modular iron, wooden, and glass structure was originally erected in Hyde Park in London to house the Great Exhibition of 1851. It showcased the products of many countries throughout the world. Here's a little wiki. The commission in charge of mounting the Great Exhibition was established in January of 1850. Within 3 weeks, the committee had received 245 entries for the building of it. As a last resort, the committee came up with a standby design. So at Chatsworth and so on and so forth, a decade later, taking advantage of the availability of the new cast plate glass, the developer developed his techniques with Chatsworth Lily House. But let me show you what it looks like. Crystal Palace in Hyde Park for the exhibition of 1851. Wow, that is beautiful. Okay, so that's the setting for this story. Mid-1800s, Crystal Palace. The Mystery of the Semi-Detached by Edith Nesbit. Edith Nesbit, born 1858 to 1924, is best known today for her imaginative, often magic-infused contributions to the Edwardian golden age of children's literature, and can lay claim to inventing the modern children's adventure story with books like The Would-Be-Goods, Five Children and It, and The Railway Children. However, she was also an activist, a founder of, you got it, a Fabian Society branch. She published several novels about socialism and wrote prolifically in several other genres. So you can consider that as you listen to the story. Hopefully it won't ruin the story for you. So here we go. He was waiting for her. He had been waiting an hour and a half in a dusty suburban lane with a row of big elms on one side and some eligible building sites on the other, and far away to the southwest, the twinkling yellow lights of the Crystal Palace. It was not quite like a country lane, for it had a pavement and lampposts, but it was not a bad place for a meeting all the same. The farther up, towards the cemetery, it was really quite rural and almost pretty, especially in twilight. But twilight had long deepened into night, and still he waited. He loved her, and he was engaged to be married to her, with the complete disapproval of every reasonable person who had been consulted. And this half-clandestine meeting was tonight to take the place of the grudgingly sanctioned weekly interview, because a certain rich uncle was visiting at her house, and her mother was not the woman to acknowledge to a moneyed uncle who might go off any day a match so deeply ineligible as hers with him. So he waited for her, and the chill of an unusually severe May evening entered into his bones. The policeman passed him with but a surly response to his good night. The bicyclists went by him like gray ghosts with foghorns, and it was nearly 10 o'clock, and she had not come. He shrugged his shoulders and turned towards his lodgings. His road led him by her house. It was a desirable, commodious, semi-detached location, and he walked slowly as he neared it. She might even now be coming out, but she was not. There was no sign of movement about the house, no sign of life, no lights even in the windows. And her people, well, they weren't early people. He paused by the gate, wondering. Then he noticed that the front door was open, wide open, and the street lamp shone a little way into the dark hall. There was something about all this that did not please him, that scared him a little, indeed. The house had a gloomy and deserted air. It was obviously impossible that it harbored a rich uncle. The old man must have left early, in which case he walked up the path of patent glazed tiles and listened. No sign of life. He passed into the hall. There was no light anywhere. Where was everybody, and why was the front door open? There was no one in the drawing room, the dining room, and the study, 9 feet by 7. They were equally blank. Everyone was out, evidently. But the unpleasant sense that he was perhaps not the first casual visitor to walk through that open door impelled him to look through the house before he went away and closed it behind him. So he went upstairs, and at the door of the first bedroom he came to, he struck a wax match, as he had done in the sitting rooms. Even as he did so, he felt that he was not alone, and he was prepared to see something. But for what he saw, he was not prepared. For what he saw lay on the bed, in a white loose gown, and it was his sweetheart, and its throat was cut from ear to ear. He doesn't know what happened then, nor how he got downstairs and into the street, but he got out somehow, and the policeman found him in a fit under the lamppost at the corner of the street. He couldn't speak when they picked him up, and he passed the night in the police cells, because the policeman had seen plenty of drunken men before, but never one in a fit. The next morning he was better, though he still was very white and shaky. But the tale he told the magistrate was convincing, and they sent a couple of constables with him to her house. There was no crowd about it, as he fancied there would be, and the blinds weren't down. As he stood dazed in front of the door, it opened, and she came out. He held onto the doorpost for support. "She's all right, you see," said the constable, who had found him under the lamp. "I told you was drunk, but you would know best." When he was alone with her, he told her not all, for that would not bear telling, but how he had come into the commodious Semi-Detached, and how he had found the door open and the lights were out, and then he had been into that long black room facing the stairs and had seen something. In even trying to hint at what he saw, he turned sick and broke down and had to have brandy given to him. "But my dearest," she said, "I dare say the house was dark, for we were all at the Crystal Palace with my uncle, and no doubt the door was open, for the maids will run out if they're left. But you could not have been in that room, because I locked it when I came away, and the key was in my pocket. I dressed in a hurry, and I left all my odds and ends lying about." "I know," he said. "I saw a green scarf on a chair, and some long brown gloves, and a lot of hairpins and ribbons, and a prayer book, and a lace handkerchief on the dressing table. Why, I even noticed the almanac on the mantelpiece, October 21st. At least it couldn't be that, because this is May, and yet it was your almanac and it was at October, is it?" "No, of course it isn't," she said, smiling rather anxiously. "But all the other things were just as you say. You must have had a dream or a vision or something." He was a very ordinary, commonplace, citified young man, and he didn't believe in visions. But he never rested day or night until he got his sweetheart and her mother away from that commodious Semi-Detached and settled them into a quiet, distant suburb. In the course of the removal, he incidentally married her, and the mother went on living with them. His nerves must have been a good bit shaken, because he was very queer for a long time, and was always inquiring if anyone had taken the desirable Semi-Detached. And when an old stockbroker with a family took it, he went the length of calling on the old gentleman and imploring him by all that he held dear not to live in that fatal house. "Why?" said the stockbroker, not unnaturally. And then he got so vague and confused between trying to tell why and trying not to tell why that the stockbroker showed him out and thanked his God that he was not such a fool as to allow a lunatic to stand in the way of his taking that really remarkably cheap and desirable semi-detached residence. Now, the curious and quite inexplicable part of this story is that when she came down to breakfast on the morning of the 22nd of October, she found him looking like death, with the morning paper in his hand. He caught her hand. He couldn't speak, and pointed to the paper. And there she read that on the night of the 21st, a young lady, the stockbroker's daughter, had been found with her throat cut from ear to ear on the bed in the long back bedroom facing the stairs of that desirable semi-detached. Okay. Pretty simple, just something strange occurring. This is something strange going on tonight. It's okay. It's all right. What do you expect for a Fabian socialist, right? Oh, hey, that's cool. Bulldog says, awesome stories. Yeah, well, okay. Let's get into a little bit more on Tower. I'll give you some of that, because there's been some work going on Tower, and I think you'll dig it. So, here we go. Going to go back to where we were. Again, if you're just joining us, Paul, Caroline, main characters. They work for the Forestry Service of Vermont. It's 1960. End of the season. Mid-November, late November. Getting cold. They have to go close up this fire tower that used to be on a hill. It's now in the middle of an island, in the middle of a giant reservoir, in the middle of a giant forest that's supposed to be closed off. Nobody's supposed to go there. Nobody even operates the tower anymore. It's supposed to be locked up. They go to check it for the season. They'd have to take a canoe across, and big snow squalls come up, massive winds. It gets very, very cold, and the canoe is blown away. Now they're stuck there. The barbed wire around the place has little black ribbons tied around it that are shaped, at least Paul thinks they're shaped like scorpions. They also found that there's weird writing on the wall. Somebody did break in, and it's very strange writing. They try to get some food. They have some snacks in one of their packs. They try to get some food by fishing, digging up worms. They know that they're going to be there for a number of days, because when they got the Jeep out, she didn't sign the requisition form, so nobody knows that she has the Jeep. And also, this visit was actually taken off the schedule. And we find out they're sort of working together for the first time, and she has worked previously with this dude named Davis, who we find out was not a good guy. He's been fired from the Forestry Service. Paul, in the meantime, she thought was rather feckless, but in fact, he's got some skills. He's sort of rising up in her estimation, and he almost got hypothermia trying to get the canoe, and she rescued him. Now they're sort of surviving. They tried to get some fish. He got food poisoning, and it went really badly. And he's had experience in Korea. He's done a lot of different things. He has a scar on his side because one of the guys he was with in Korea killed a little kid, and the kid put up a fight, and he got hit. And so now they know they're going to be there for a number of days, and he goes out to sort of clean up a little bit. He's starting to feel a little bit better after the food poisoning. It's been about a day. They've gone through another day. It's getting towards evening. They're going to have to really manage their food or go out and try to fish again or something. And so they're there. They have a little fire that they built inside this sort of empty tower. There's no radio communications or anything. And they're just hoping that someone, after a number of days, will find out that they're there and that they'll send somebody somehow. They have no family. They have no loved ones or anything. And so we see that he gets up and she says, can you eat anything? And so he says, my brain still hurts. I'm glad I didn't make you sick too. We got lucky there. And she says, and now we know we can fish as long as we clean them better. He looked at the paper she had used to clean him, and then he goes outside to get cleaned up himself and get rid of the papers. He's going to get some more water. And while he's gone, Caroline searched the contents of her pack to remove her matchbox then headed to the desk to get some more paper to form the foundation of her new little fire. Now, there's really no trees. It's just scrubby brush on this island. But as she lifted the clipboard for the schedule, she paused. She stood there when Paul returned, and he knit his brow as he put the mugs on the table and saw her expression. "What's wrong, Caroline?" Her fingers were out of their gloves, cold and pale, and she slid the clipboard to him, tapping the sheet with her index finger. "Paul, the writing on that last entry, the one that's marked as the final for the year and no one else is supposed to be coming?" "Yeah." "That's Davis's writing." He lifted the clipboard and studied it. "Okay." Then Caroline pointed upward. "It's the same as the writing on the wall." So we sort of read a little bit, but I wanted to give you that recap a little bit. And we're going to just a little bit more as a recap. Have a time break. And then someone says, "Vindictive jerk." Paul sat on one of the metal stools beside her, facing the graffiti, his right arm on the desk near the clipboard. He really must have been messed up to trek all the way back here for the sole purpose of trashing the place. Caroline nodded, but in an almost perfunctory way, almost without being aware that her head moved. And to put those ribbons on the barbed wire around the island, she refocused on the scrawl, feeling anew the chill of the place, the chill, as if it had thickened in the room, as if it were alive and sensing vulnerability. "Yeah." He rubbed his chin. "Yeah, one last insult before he took off, wherever he went." She read some of the words again and shook her head. "But Paul, why in the world would he write crazy things like that?" She got up and shot to Paul's backpack, listening to him as she brought the pack to the table. "Do you think you can eat?" she asked. He nodded, accepting a piece of beef jerky, and then shook his head. He says, "Who knows what germinates in a mind like his? What he lets out and what he keeps inside, all manner of slights and angers, brooding, boiling. We saw part of his imbalance, but in his silent times, his alone times," he took another bite and spoke through clenched teeth. "Now, you say he never bothered you." "No, I never liked working with him, but he didn't touch me. Never said anything strange." His brow declined, then rose to face off with the sanity-starved poetry. What the hell? For a moment, neither spoke, and then he squinted at the words, reading, "There is a silence in the world since we have said farewell." Now he says to her, "I wonder if he came back here and wrote that after they gave him the heave-ho, or he did it before they fired him, just around the time that his behavior was coming to light." She says, "Well, if he did it before he was let go, he wouldn't have needed to break the padlock to the door, unless he was, again, just trying to be vindictive." "That's true." Then he reads some more. "But when I hear the music moan in rooms of thronging laughter, a tongueless demon drives me forth, and silence follows after." That's the most disturbing portion. "Well, good riddance," she says. Paul grunted and winced. "You all right?" "Yeah, and just thinking of that guy's ugly mug, or maybe it's some lingering effects of my cooking. I don't know." He pointed at the ravings on the wall. "I wonder how Janet's doing after everything. And her daughter. That damn jerk. Have you ever spoken to her about that?" Caroline shook her head. "And I wonder how long it went on. I mean, allegedly. I'd hate to get sued since she hasn't pressed charges. I understand she's a single mother, and some of the others might not want to be publicly visible, or they might feel threatened, but why not stand up?" "Well, no, Paul. If not for yourself, for your daughter and the others who might get hurt. Now he's run off, maybe using a new name, settling in like a tick someplace in the U.S. or Mexico or Canada." "Oh, that's a good point." He landed a glance on her. That cuts right to the heart of it. No BS. "You know, you'd make a pretty good mom, Caroline." And she inclined her head at the graffiti. "I just don't suffer fools. I learned as a child to handle problems with directness and finality. Look at the result of their inaction. He's put us all on his enemies list without getting him off the streets. By leaving him out here, wherever he's gone, they run the risk of retribution. Well, all I remember is that bowling ball head on that boulder body, zipped into extra-large coveralls. Wherever he hides, unless he goes on a strict diet, he'll stick out. They allowed for a silent moment then, and then Paul pushed aside his little snack and let out a long breath. I still feel shaky. I shouldn't have eaten that. And he turned, eyes searching. Hold on. His head tilted strangely. You hear that? Not the cat meowing. He shot to his feet, pausing once more, then stalking towards the northern portion of the tower. I think that's a plane. He looked around his feet, and Caroline heard it, faint, distant, a low hum, high in the northwestern darkness, approaching. Paul snatched a bundle of the twigs and touched them to the fire, whispering, "Come on!" The bundle, his face almost alien with demonic color, started to glow. "Come on!" Then the wood caught, and he ran to the door. If there was a plane, it was high up there, and Paul's hope to be seen, well, that seemed slim. But he raced from the room into the cold, into the relentless night, letting the door swing behind him and tracing sparks and smoke in his wake. Caroline reached the outer platform and watched the jack-o'-lantern hues flow down like water, stairway upon stairway, down, across, and down again, until the tower beams and staircases seemed to spit him out, and he ran to the north side of the snow-covered rocks. Above, she could hear the sound of the propeller plane, and she spotted the red and blue of its relatively tiny signal lights. It was miles away, but Paul waved the bundle of burning twigs over his head, back and forth, casting arcs of orange across the snow and the stones, over his wool cap, onto the thin ice that stretched into seeming infinity before him. The plane buzzed like a lazy hummingbird, sometimes disappearing behind what must have been thin layers of cloud. It flew at a diagonal that did not take it over the lake, but might have brought it within sight. And it disappeared completely behind more clouds. Hey, hey, Paul yelled as the twigs broke into ashes and embers fell like sparklers or hellish flowers all around. Come on! He turned to the remnants of a shrub trying to set it on fire. And like some proud beast in a dimension just beyond reach, the sound crossed the sky, 1 foot, 1 yard, 1 mile at a time. It did not reappear, and the noise flattened, then dropped in pitch, indicating that the plane was past them, moving away. Paul lowered his arms, like a jilted lover turning with the sound, the flames still eating what remained in his grasp, until he tossed the dead bouquet onto the stones. For a moment, he stood rigid, apparently staring into the night. Then he made his way to the steps, returning to their cage, and when he reached the top, he offered a thin smile in the light that emerged from the door. It was worth a try. I should have remembered what we discussed earlier. Paul, you don't look so good, she warned, studying his sweaty face and bleary, wide-casting eyes. But he seemed not to hear. Like a steam engine at a stop, he stood before her at the platform, expelling great clouds of breath. He set his singed, gloved hands on his hips and smiled. Still, 'tis only for a few days, he said in a mock British accent. And then he collapsed. And there's a time break. It was not for a few days. As Sunday hardened into Monday, the world, time, and her mind itself seemed to grow colder, rigid, stuck in an ever more frozen state. No one came. Their provisions dwindled to nearly nothing, though Paul could not eat more than a few bites before he would wince and need to vomit or need to sleep. He grew paler and weaker, and Caroline's struggles to keep the fire burning as a sign of hope, if not a small protection against the increasing cold and snow, well, they were only slightly more effective. than her feckless attempts to catch more fish. Sometimes Paul would awaken with vivid clarity, and she would help him into a sitting position, telling him the day was Sunday or Monday, and offering him an estimation of the time. She would try to get him to drink and eat something, and at first he would transmit a thankful, hopeful expression, perhaps a nod, a smile, and then make the attempt. But the repeatedly disastrous results soon saw him not only lose that enthusiastic energy, even the pretense of such hope slid inside him, making way for something animal-like, skittish and wary. He was not afraid of her, she could tell, but of the world, the very material of it that might enter his system to circulate about him with the flow of the stars at night and make him sick. As repeated snow squalls and harsh winds blew through the open sluway of the lake and the surrounding forest, he became very wary. And that's all I have. So, hopefully that's good. I misread it. But hopefully that's good. And let's see, inside Rumble, we've got, this is interesting. I don't know what you guys are talking about there, but there's something very interesting there. I'm not sure what it is. It almost looks like one of those choose your own adventure things. Like somebody's describing something. I always wanted to do one of those. I always thought that would be cool. Birdhouse says, wow. I'm going to, Pigeon Incognito says, laugh my you-know-what. I'm going to troll Mr. Gard till he reads a choose your own adventure. Those are interesting books. We used to sell those at the bookstore. Kids used to love those things, and they were already old at that time. They were already like 20 years old, but kids still bought them. They loved them. And I watch this guy who goes on the channel of The Worst Thing About New Books, and his name is Abe, and he's really an interesting dude. He's got a disease that is actually a terminal illness. And he gives his lists about his favorite. He does Doctor Who stuff. He reviewed some of the early Doctor Who serials. Does his favorite D&D modules. I've never even played D&D, but I enjoy listening to him talk about it. He talks about Robert E. Howard stuff and H.P. Lovecraft stuff and Clark Ashton Smith. In fact, it was because of one of his videos that inspired me to quote Clark Ashton Smith on the wall inside the inside my story, inside the tower. That's actually a pair of Clark Ashton Smith's poems that Abe read and inspired me to go find them. So he's really great. If you want to find the channel, it's called The Worst Thing About New Books. And Abe does a lot of those choose your own adventure books. And some of them have been so popular with people that like 30 years later, they've issued like hardcover ones with beautiful artwork. And you would never know that there was such a subgenre that found that to be so popular. And for me, it was interesting because, like I said, we used to do outside role playing before it was really understood as role playing. We just played outside. And we would have like staff battles, and I would set people on missions with little pieces of paper all around in the woods. And there would be these plastic bags. I'd put the messages in, and guys would have to go places. And then I'd set them against each other out in the summertime. We'd have staff battles, and somebody would win like the crystal shard or whatever that they were looking for in the fantasy world. We called it wizards. But when it got to be wintertime, we couldn't do it outside anymore that easily. So I put everything on a graph paper, and I had it that you could like go across mountains. I made it like a whole kingdom. And you could go inside the castles. And once I realized you could go inside the castles, I realized I could make up stories and have people go inside rooms and meet monsters. And I could like, oh, they could fight monsters. Well, that means our guys would have to have like a certain amount of like life points. And the monsters would have to have a life point that would be a lot smaller. Then you'd have weapons. And you'd have to have some way to have the weapons have a power that could hit the monster and reduce their life points. And you'd need to have like, what would the power be? Oh, could you use 1 die or 2 dice? You'd have a dice thing and a multiplier, and that would tell you how many points came off it. You'd roll to see whether you'd hit, and then you'd roll to see how much you harmed the guy. And it turned out it was exactly like D&D. Like it was my thing. Right? I did it for my friends anyway. They'd come over, and we played wizards. And like, I didn't even know Dungeons and Dragons existed. I was like, what? It was wild. So that was pretty interesting because I actually was writing up these stories in a notebook inside the castles, and I would tailor them so that they would actually get the guys to a certain spot the way I would do it outside. I wanted an ending, some, great climax to a story. And that's exactly the way the choose your own adventure stories are. You're like, you pick things and it has a couple alternate endings, but they try to get you to one of just a few endings that they've already chosen, which is pretty cool. So that's the way that I would design the game for Wizards. And we did a bunch of different things that I wrote up. That's wild. That's so crazy. Well, anyway, thanks, you guys. And just to finish off, I saw your notation, and I don't know why I missed that information. So I hope you'll accept my apologies, guys. And so that's something that is frustrating, and I appreciate you being on my defense. That's great. And so, all right, take the weekend. See you tomorrow for America Unplugged. And I will see you at 2:00 for Knights of the Storm. Then on Monday, we'll come back. We'll hit that Robert Reich piece, and I'll try to group this all into a much more cohesive presentation. And hopefully that'll be good because, it's disappointing when you disappoint yourself. So I'll just say that. So thank you, everybody, for being here. Remember, you can head on over to the Substack. You can head on over to the... let's see, you can get the news notes. If you're a paid subscriber, you can go to the Former Star Trek Writing Fellow channel, and that will rock. And I will leave you with this one, and it's going to be cool. It's just going to be short, and then I'll get the kitty something. I don't know what it'll be. She was very demanding. Yeah, she's so cool. She's such a good pal. And in the meantime, I'll leave you with this. Thanks, you guys. You're in my corner, and I can't tell you. That's epic. Good allies. We'll keep rocking out. Here's a little something. Talk to you again tomorrow in the chats. Peace.
We now return control of your television set to you until next week at this same time, when the control voice will take you to the outer limits.